I was gonna start a new kind of like a series on potted mango trees. So just kind of give you a little bit of my background on growing trees and potted plants. It's pretty new to me in terms of growing out a plant in a pot with the intention that it's always going to be in a pot. I mean, I've grown potted plants, of course, before, but lots of times those trees were always intended to go in the ground after a year or maybe a couple of years. This would be the first time for me. Pretty new to me. I would say the last 5 years I've been kind of a bit focused on having permanent potted fruit trees. So I was going to just start a series on these potted mango trees a bit. And first thing you guys gotta do though, I'm not going to talk too much about soil, but check out the soil video in terms of what my recommendation for soil is. So the first tree I'm going to show you, and it's probably my oldest potted mango tree that I have. I got this in 2021. It was supposed to be a Keo Savoy. Unfortunately, after it fruited last year, I'm pretty confident that this is probably a Jin Huang Golden Queen, and it's not a Keo Savoy. So here's the tree. I just recently uppotted this to a 15-gallon. For the longest time, it's been in a 7-gallon since 2021. And my approach with the potted plants, I think with the proper soil, my goal is that I don't need to constantly uppot this every year or every other year. But again, I don't have enough history with it. I believe with a 15-gallon, I could probably at least kind of keep it in a 15-gallon for at worst 5 years. Maybe at best it would be 10 years, but I don't really know. We're just gonna see how it goes. I don't have enough history on it yet, but it's something to try out. So this is a pretty much it's a Jin Huang. I let this branch fruited last year. Oh, let me show you guys the trunk first. Let me grab a Sharpie from the pocket. And I got it in 2021. It was about the size of a little bit, I think the trunk was a little bit larger than a Sharpie, but it's grown quite nicely. The trunk's increased in size quite nicely. So it's been pretty healthy up until I let it fruit. So in last year in 2023, there's 3 major limbs here, like 1, 2, 3. I let one of the limbs hold 2 fruits, and the other ones I didn't at all, right? So it was only 1 limb holding 2 fruits. Then the intention was I was hoping that the limb that was holding fruit, it's not going to grow any vegetation, right? But I was hoping the other 2 would. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. There was just completely last year, completely no vegetation at all on it. So this year it bloomed again. You can kind of see the blooms came out right here. And the first one was bad, then it bloomed again right here. Okay, and this is ended up being bad too. Most of the blooms on these guys seem a bit fungal prone. They don't seem to do too well. So, but this is kind of like an example of what happens with a lot of people's tree, where once you let it bloom and fruit, it just keeps on shrinking. Like the branches just keep on shrinking. Like you lose good branches with bud. This is a good example of it. This was what I cut last year in terms of like the fruiting branch or the flower branch, and then it bloomed again this year. See, these are buds that are gone already, and then it bloomed again this year. It's no good. So I mean, I'm losing probably, hopefully this puts out some kind of vegetation this year. But imagine if it didn't, and you were trying to get fruits again, you're losing like, gosh, this is like 6 or 8 inches of growth. And it's common to see that happen here, where people start off with a pretty large tree, but they let it flower, they let fruit, and then it just kind of constantly keeps on shrinking. Like you lose like a good buds and stems, and you keep on shrinking. So like this, there's not gonna be any vegetation that's gonna be pushing out from here. Most likely it's gonna be coming even probably below here, maybe here, see some buds. But again, I mean, that's pretty much about 6 inches, 6-8 inches of growth that you're losing. So you can see how, at least in a slower California climate, lots of people's trees kind of shrink. So okay, that's the first tree. This is a Florida rootstock. It's a Florida rootstock, but I have a feeling that it's not a ZIL rootstock, just because the graft was pretty high up. It just didn't feel like a ZIL tree. And I'm going to talk, and I'm going to go on to next some of my trees, recent trees I got. And these are, to me, these all look like ZIL grafts. So this one's a Madame Francis. I just picked this up just in the last couple of weeks. This is a Sauvignon. Don't really know much about it, but lots of the ZIL graft, I would call it like a pretty clean graft. Like lots of times it's a bud graft, but that union is pretty clean, so it's not as easy to see it. Unfortunately, with the ZIL graft, and this might not be a popular opinion, so just kind of keep that in mind. And you know, this is just my opinion on the ZIL plants. You know, depending on your guys' own experience, you know, you might have different experience with it, but my opinion with the ZIL turpentine rootstocks is that they don't do too well in California. I mean, most turpentine rootstocks are not as vigorous in California, but in my opinion, specifically the ZIL rootstock is probably it's the worst of them. They tend to kind of grow much more weaker, much more slower, and they have a habit of just, no matter what size the tree is, they have a habit of just kind of dying on you when you have a bad winter. That's just my opinion on it. It might not be a popular opinion, but that's my opinion on the ZIL turpentine rootstock. It's a Costa Rican turpentine rootstock that they use, so I think it's a bit worse than the other ones. And I could show you guys how to identify some of the ZIL, the non-ZIL rootstock that you guys kind of find. I tend to like to get some of those. These I know are specifically ZIL, but I'm just pretty much getting them to use as a science source. So this one's another ZIL one. This one's a Edward tree, and then I have a 015 right here. This is an 015. Okay, here's an example of a carrier I have, and this is an example of a tree that's a Florida rootstock, but it's definitely not a ZIL rootstock. You know, it's definitely probably turpentine, but it's definitely not a ZIL rootstock. I could see it because this is kind of like a cleft graft right here. It's not a bud graft, and you know, ZIL uses a bud graft, and usually when you look at theirs, it's very clean. And there are some other nurseries that use a bud graft too, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a ZIL graft, it's a bud graft, but you know, it's a good chance that it is when you do get them. So this is a example of one that's a cleft graft, turpentine rootstock most likely, but not a ZIL kind of turpentine, Costa Rican turpentine. So really good. I got this last year. It was a good size to start off with already, but it seems to do really well. I mean, it has a lot of much more vertical branching on it, you see. So that's just a carry. This is a Valencia Pride. And if I don't kind of mention the rootstock, they're all Florida rootstocks for the most part. Here's a Pickering. I have two Pickerings. They both kind of set fruit. And Pickering is a nice one. The bloom seems very disease resistant. So, like you can see all these fruitlets. I'll be picking these off, but this is a Pickering. Okay, up next, this is the Julie. My Julie hasn't looked that great, so we'll see what's going to happen to it. Maybe it's just the blooms that's causing everything to be so droopy, but this is Julie. This is a Thai variety called Mun Kunsi. It's been very powder and mildew prone. I've sprayed this several times already, and it's just kind of been powder and mildew prone, so I'll probably have to spray it again next year. I mean, not next year, probably just, today, sometime today, this week. The Mun Kunsi. Here's a buttercream. There's like one fruitlet here. It has a pretty decent size trunk, so let's see. I mean, maybe I'll let this fruit hold or not. I'm not too sure. It doesn't really look that good, so it might just drop on its own. But this is buttercream. This is a dwarf Hawaiian, and this is actually on its second bloom. Not really sure if this. I don't think this would be a variety I would recommend for us in California. I mean, had a friend that said it didn't do too well for her either. It just seems to be too. It seems to bloom way too early, and then bloom again. See, this is one of those things where the first initial bloom was here, and then that didn't work out, and now it's blooming below it. So I mean, this is all bloom branches. I mean, I'm gonna lose about like probably like a foot of growth already from the vegetation, probably more. See, these are all bloom branches all right here, and if I was to get rid of it, I would need to cut it down here, because what happens in our area, it just blooms, and then the bad bloom doesn't work out, then the blooms just keep on kind of starting up again in the node below it, and then goes to the next node below it. So again, this probably started out as a much taller tree, and when I have to prune all these flowers back on this, I think I'm losing probably maybe like a foot and a half of growth. So I'm going to cut it down there, and that's not too big of a deal if it's on a more larger tree, but on a kind of new plant like this, losing a lot of that stems sometimes, it doesn't do too well. So okay, this is dwarf Hawaiian. Up next, this is the Shiri. So this is the Shiri right here. This is a white Peri, and the blooms look pretty good so far, pretty fungal resistant. So this is white Peri. Okay, behind that is a Glen. Here's another Kerry with some fruitlets on it. I have quite a few few Kerrys in pots, so maybe on some of them I'm gonna let it fruit. There's Kerry. There's a small Alfonso that I pretty much saved from a Black Friday sale. Let's see how it goes. And this is also another small plant right here. This is a Kill Savoy. Really small plant. This is a Sun Paris. I can't remember if I sprayed or not. I don't think I did, but look at this fruit set on it. Unfortunately, this is a really small tree, so I'm not gonna let it hold fruit, but it's probably gonna be something I'm gonna look forward to grafting on to a larger tree. It might be, the flowers might be pretty fungal resistant, or at least able to set a lot of fruit to fungal issue. It's an Indian variety. Lots of Indian variety seem to have issues setting fruits, like just because of the blooms are being so fungal prone here in mild weather. So Sun Paris. This is M4, and a bunch of fruitlets on here too. It's kind of good to see it being able to set fruitlets, but again, the plant's too small. It's gonna be pruning off. So this is M4. A very good kind of coconut tasting flavored mango. Out of the coconut flavored mangoes, I thought M4 was the best of them. So if you guys want to know a little bit more about it. And I have a ton of these new plants which I just got in the last week or so, last couple weeks. Very small plants. This is from Tropical Acres, so I'll try to list some of them. Kind of have it in here in shade. Like if you guys do grow out your mangoes, I recommend placing it in a spot that has, you know, morning sun till afternoon, and then after that shade. So like a, you know, maybe like an east facing wall is probably the best spot, you know, up until like the tree get to about like, you know, 4 feet or so, then you could probably put it in full sun. But when it's still kind of small, I really highly recommend you guys try to keep it more in shade. And they do well with morning sun, but they don't do too well with afternoon sun. So okay, so what's this? I'm gonna try to, there's quite a few of them, so I'm gonna try to get kind of get myself into it and get to the tags to kind of name them. So this one's Fruit Punch right here. Fruit Punch. Let's see what else I got. So I have this in quite a bit of shade because it's just much more recent plants for me. Another Indian variety, Amrapali. So have a Ugly Betty right here. Let's see what else. A Neelam. This is a Neelam. And Juicy Peach. This one's the one I've been excited about. It's a white Alfonso. So I do grow 3 types of Alfonso. The regular Alfonso, Fernet Alfonso, and this strain of white Alfonso. Oops, sorry, I think this one is the white Alfonso. And this right here is Super Alfonso. It's not a real Alfonso, like it's a completely different flavor profile. Didn't even come from a Alfonso seedling or cross, so, but it has the name Super Alfonso. Quite a few more. This one's Banga Napali. So I don't have a lot. I'll probably update these later on, but these are the latest ones I got. Alright, that's it for now on the potted mango trees. It's a bit disorganized right now, but I think I've been moving pots around just because. But I think once I get it organized, I'll have a few more videos of these potted mango trees, and you guys kind of see how it does. Alright, thanks everyone.